for meeting someone in the bathroom, it wasn't that awkward. So.
I'm not saying I was late to set. Punctual, this guy here.
You know, I'm not a journalist, but I'm trying here, Mike.
Doing a great job, sir.
Thanks, you too.
What's up, man?
Mike, here we are, actors on actors.
You know, decades later, what's up, man?
This is wild, man. It's crazy that this is what it took to see you again, but I'm glad nonetheless.
The universe brought us together.
I know.
Once again, man.
All these years later. I feel like last time I saw you was probably for about 2 minutes at one of these industry parties, but
it would have to be. In my mind, I'm going back to Austin, Texas, as the last time that we really had a real combo, you know what I'm saying? Without all the bells and whistles, you know?
I know, in these last few days, so many memories have been flooding back. It was a good time. We were kids. We did not know that. We thought we were grown.
Definitely thought I was
speaking
grown.
for myself.
No.
Yeah.
Very accurate. Very accurate. Friday Night Lights days.
Friday Night Lights days.
You're like the original, the OG cast. I'm like the new addition that popped in.
Yeah, but we needed it. We needed it at that point.
Okay.
After season 2, we needed some new blood.
Some new blood, I know.
But yeah, just these last few days, knowing I was going to see you, I've just been thinking about all the good times. Been thinking about 24-hour fitness basketball games.
24-hour fitness basketball game. You're a sleeper. People don't understand it. You're very athletic and you got a shot, bro. You hoop. You could definitely play ball.
I don't know about that, but I'm the guy that you just suspect you don't need to worry about. And then if I have a very open shot, with no one
come
in front
on,
of me,
man. I can't let you do that. It's more like, white man can't jump. You know what I'm saying? Woody Harrelson.
Or run.
No, man. But definitely a baller.
Well, man, I would like to kick it off going back to Friday Night Lights days and working with you and, just knowing what a formative experience that was for me. I mean, it kind of changed my relationship to acting. That show changed the way I thought about acting in the sense that Peter Berg, he really put all the responsibility on us to make these characters our own.
Definitely.
And yeah, I'm curious what aspects of working on that show do you feel like you've taken with you, things that you've learned on that show? What has sort of stayed with you?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, I was so anxious and nervous joining the show because, you guys were already established. Everybody knew one another. You had such a great relationship. And, like the new kid, going into a new school, you felt like the outsider. But at that first cast dinner where everybody kind of stood up and kind of introduced themselves and kind of welcomed us into the team, all that kind of washed away. You got somebody like Kyle Chandler standing up there and talking through the experience and yourself, like talking through the experience of what it's like to work on the show. And you don't quite get it until you show up day one and got somebody like Peter Berg, yelling at the camera, all right, the turn left. Okay. And he's talking to the camera guy, to find certain shots while we're in the middle of a take. So like the idea of like always being on and prepared to adapt, and improv. And like you said, taking ownership of the characters and expected to bring something every day that wasn't on the page was an expectation and responsibility that you had on that show. So I think I definitely take that with me.
Yeah. I mean, that show almost felt like anarchy to a degree, especially for a network television show. Yeah, I just remember the sort of trepidation. Like, do we really have this space and this freedom? And then slowly it just becomes a game. And, all of what you said, that freedom and with that, the responsibility
Correct.
that comes with that. But I think, not that acting can always be fun, but that show taught me that really good work can come out of that sense of play and exploration.
Big
and
time.
so many times it was just like trying to break the other actor, you know, trying to
Yeah,
throw
yeah,
something that
yeah.
it's just a game, you
Big
know?
time.
All right. Well, next, what the hell, Mike?
What happened? What'd I
What
do?
happened?
What? We
I'm
grew
just
up. Look at you,
I
man.
know.
What you like? I said
Just
I was telling you before, like you're a whole father of two,
I
and a
know.
husband,
I know.
and a phenomenal actor. You know, like it's bro, man. I'm so proud of you, man. It's been amazing to watch, man.
If its hair is still attached, it can track us remotely, so we want to go as quick as we can.
Okay,
Is it working?
not much is coming off.
You know, every time I see you take on these new characters, you know, and a lot of them uh, sometimes feel like outsiders of these groups, of these pockets. How do you know, find the challenges, um, relatability or not, to some of these characters that have been so memorable over the years?
You know, it's hard to say if I'm seeking them out or if
Hmm.
it's just that's how directors see me fitting in, and I don't think too often about through lines between characters, but I suppose stepping outside of it and looking at it, there have been a string of characters that are maybe slightly more difficult to classify, you know, in terms of good and bad,
Yeah.
in terms of motivations, and I think I've just been I have enjoyed and been drawn to characters that, you know, take some time to kind of figure out and are not easily pegged and
Mm.
understood because, you know, that's my experience with most people, you know,
Okay.
is you know, there are plenty of people that forthcoming and tell you exactly how they're feeling, but a lot of people, you know, could be going through a whole world inside that you have no idea about. I don't know. It's yeah.
Get that. You know, it's just one of those things where, you know, like you said, you don't know if it's whether, you know, the characters are drawn to you or are you to them or, you know, or the director's, you know, aspect of it all. Like the connection that you have between Yorgos Lanthimos and yourself, how did that kind of manifest itself when it came to Bugonia and this project?
We'll go back a little bit further.
Mm,
Received a call from my agent and friend Brandy, who's just right over there.
okay.
Anyways,
What's up, Brandy?
what's up, Brandy?
How you doing?
Out of the blue, and she told me that Yorgos Lanthimos has a script that he wants you to read and he wants to meet you. And I was very shocked that he had any idea who I was or had seen my work. And I read the script for Kinds of Kindness and was highly perplexed, but also
Mm,
felt like I had been through kind of an emotional roller coaster. I mean, that was one of the wildest scripts I've ever read.
okay.
And then cut to there I am. And you know, I don't know if you've heard any about his rehearsal process.
Not too much.
Well, so he comes from like avant Greek theater background,
Okay.
and so I had heard a little bit before I showed up, but he sort of makes up these games for actors to participate in, and it you know, it's all very silly, but kind of helps to build trust.
Okay.
And the first few days just left me feeling extremely lost.
A little vulnerable.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess the result of that, it just sort of takes some of the reverence off of the material, off of the
Mm,
lines, and immediately tunes you into the other actors. And so I was really thankful that I had that as a way into, you know, these worlds that he creates.
nice.
And so then starting Begonia, as you know, working with Ryan Coogler, you feel like you have a head start when you've worked with someone, you know their sensibilities, you don't have to over talk, over
Correct.
explain anything. And there's that trust that allows you to take the leap, which is where the good stuff usually comes from.
You know I waited for you.
Shit, well, I don't know how in the hell you gonna do that.
Because you told me you loved me.
Man, well, I told you to stay the fuck away from me too, but I guess you didn't hear that part,
Oh,
huh?
I heard you.
I watched Sinners on the plane ride from Venice to Telluride,
Okay.
was blown away, loved it, and that next day, I was in a restroom at this Mexican food restaurant, and I hear this Plemons, and it was Coogler. It was
It's
Ryan
cool.
Coogler. So I was like, "What?"
That's what's up, man.
Yeah. And for meeting someone in the bathroom, it wasn't that awkward. So I
That's
appreciated
what's
that.
up, man.
He's such a great guy, and I just have to say, congratulations,
Oh,
man.
thank you,
We
man.
spoke a little bit before. That movie on a box office level and on an artistic level truly gave the entire industry a sense of hope. Yeah, so thanks
Man,
for that.
hey, man, kind words, bro.
Yeah, I'm curious, reading that script,
Mm.
obviously you probably follow Ryan Coogler almost anywhere that
Pretty much.
he would lead you. But yeah, I guess just what were you feeling approaching playing these two parts? And I'm not a journalist, but I'm trying here, Mike.
You're doing a great job, sir.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Here's my real question, because I'm always I've been asked, like, what was the preparation process like? But
Mhm.
to me, I just think back to, like, you read the script, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's time to start. Like, where do you start when you're about to dive into preparing to play these two characters?
The starting place was, walking right up to the cliff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it was this was something that I, was anxious about. I was a bit nervous. I was like, okay, are these characters that are going to get the better of me in a sense of it could be done in a way that just doesn't work. The
Right.
ambition of an actor playing two characters, identical twins at that, and there was a lot of just nerves around what the process was going to be like, and then I think wiping all that away, it was like, okay, let me just focus on where did it start for these two characters, like building out from their childhood trauma forward, um, and how did that kind of manifest in each brother differently. One's a bit more internal with his pain, doesn't say a lot, kind of keeps things to himself. And the other one, he masks his pain in his charisma and his charm and his smiles. He smiles through it. And, you know, understanding that those are two sides of me also. So I think tapping into the intrusive thoughts that we all have and figuring out how to place those into these two characters and, you know, because identical twins are its own special thing.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic that they're their own celebrities, and any set of twins in any neighborhood around the world, they are the local
sure.
celebrities. They're
Yeah.
they're them.
Yeah.
You can take them anywhere, and people are going to stare. They're going to ask questions that are probably inappropriate or wild, like
Mhm.
the craziest kind of questions. So Ryan had some childhood friends that were twins as well. Same with me, and I think diving into their psyche also and their experience and things that are tangible and real that I needed to kind of get into. And then it's all the things that we need, right? It's the wardrobe. What are the things that allows you to completely be one person or the other? I wore shoes that were too small for Stack because I liked
Yeah.
him antsy and not really being able to sit still, like smoke a size too big, like those, basic kind of things that kind of helped me feel planted and
Mhm.
rooted in smoke because he didn't move around a lot, he didn't move as much. And so once I got the childhood trauma and started to layer it with that and the music, and it just all kind of started to take shape, and Ryan being the perfect North Star to kind of keep you on track for, where the story's going and where these brothers are going. You just had to jump off the cliff, man. I think the first time that I had to go to set and transfer over from one brother to the next and come back, it was like that moment of like, can anybody tell the difference?
It makes me nervous just thinking about stepping on to set the first time. It's like, well, here we go.
Here we go. And
Acting with myself. Hope I don't suck 2 times.
And then after day one, I think it was just, it was a train left the station, and but seeing how everybody responded to each brother, I thought was really reassuring.
Yeah.
That they felt something different, and that presence was different. Really was really encouraging as we continued to shoot the
Well,
film.
you managed to find this balance with both of them, that they both felt so lived in.
Pop was here.
In Kinds of Kindness, I was playing
Mm.
3 different characters in one film, and Yorgos was adamant about it not becoming some, like, actor trick of caricatures and, like, "Look
Yes.
how much I can change," and so, like, the fact that you managed to differentiate them in the
Mm.
way that you did through your characterization in a way that was, like, just
Yeah.
enough without it turning into some actor show,
Yeah, yeah,
and there's,
yeah.
like, a true internal difference in both of them, so
Appreciate that,
kudos,
man.
man.
Thank you, man. Thank you,
Yeah.
man.
Your hair has been destroyed.
You shaved off my hair?
Yes, we've shaved off your hair.
Why have you shaved off my hair?
To prevent you from contacting your ship.
With Teddy, and you mind if I call him Teddy?
You can call him Teddy. Teddy Bear.
Teddy Bear, bro, like there's so many times I was watching the film and mouth was like just jaw dropped because you think you know where it's going, but you don't, And with him, the first time you're watching it, you're like, oh, this guy really believes something that's not real. But to him it's clearly real. So no matter how absurd the reality is for a character, you did such a seamless job in being honest and truthful, to what he thought was real, which ends up,
Ends up
being
how it
real,
ends up.
yeah, how it ends up. So was there ever moments of like where you felt, I don't know, especially challenged to believe what Teddy believed, or like what he was trying to sell, in a way?
I knew going into it, I mean, one factor was just that there's a lot of dialogue, and
Mm.
a lot of very specific dialogue, based on all of Teddy's research and
Appreciate you.
obsession. And so I knew nothing works in the movie if I don't believe these words as they're coming out of my mouth. And so I think that's kind of why I was asking. Like, I'm always curious because there's a period of time
Mm.
when you get a job that you're excited about. That's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And then when it's time to start, for me, it's always like this almost sinking feeling. It's like, now I have to do this. And I remember that with Teddy, and I was working on something else at the time, and I wasn't going to have time to wait until I finished that to start prepping. And so I started dipping my toe in and
Mm.
reading the script, sort of wandering around various places looking for inspiration and all of that. Yeah, it's something that there was, for whatever reason, probably how brilliantly I found the script to be written, that for some reason I felt like I understood his core.
Mm.
One thing that I really loved about him, as sort of twisted as his methods are, that you discover in the film,
Mhm.
there's this feeling, I think, in modern times where the world seems to be, a scary place, and there are a lot of amazing people out there that want to help. They've got something inside them that's just
Mm.
like this energy to like do something.
Mhm.
And even personally, it's like, where do you direct this energy?
Hmm.
And I think for Teddy, he had that to an overwhelming degree. The other aspect of him that I really loved was most people as well sort of can't help but deal with people and niceties and social norms and
Mm.
all. And Teddy was a character that if you asked him how he was doing, he was going to tell you exactly how he was
Big
doing.
time, big
So there
time,
was
big time.
a real liberating aspect to that, of just being this kind of open nerve. And yeah, I think
Hmm.
in his mind, in the story that he was telling himself, he's the hero in this scenario.
Big time.
And, we all have this version of ourselves, how we see ourselves, and then there's this objective reality. But for me as an actor, that objective reality didn't matter. It was all how he saw himself, you know.
And there was humanity there, man. There was really a sense of, you know, as you peel back those layers and exposed a bit of the why he is the way he is, you know, which was really beautifully done, um, in um, those surreal kind of flashes that you guys had. No, it was really nice to see because his why was he should be like this right now. You know,
Right.
you know, like
It tracks.
it tracks, and you understand like he'll go to any lengths to right an injustice that he feels is there. So there is this bit of like this heroic um spirit to him that you brought to the forefront in a way. Yeah, because there's this feeling, there's this pace, there's this tone of like there's something else going on here. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And why is he the only one that's so bought into this? You know, so there's that bit of it, man. It was a fun ride, man. It was a fun ride. There's something that we did touch on a little bit over there, but the physicality of, you know, from role to role, we want to look different, we want to feel different, right? There's this, you know, ability to transform, not just with our, you know, our mental and our, you know, and our emotions, but physically it helps as well. That was like the slimmest and like cuttest you've seen. Yeah, he rode a bike, so like he got his miles in, you know what I'm saying, daily. So, and that
He rode a bike.
was there anything to that physique that made Teddy feel like very like specific for you?
In my head, I
Mm.
just imagined him as this sort of like wiry kind of creature of the forest, you
Okay,
know,
okay,
or
yeah,
something
yeah.
that was just like hungry and scraping by with his cousin. And so it was just kind of, I don't know, something that we're just constantly discovering, like you said, through wardrobe.
Mhm.
Find one little piece that does something for you. That's funny. You talked about your boots being too small,
Yeah.
and that being a choice. Mine were too, and they really
Oh,
took my feet
wow.
up.
Okay, okay,
But
okay.
it's funny how those little things can really lock you in.
Right?
They seem so small or insignificant.
I ain't never saw no roots, no demons, no ghosts, no magic. Just power.
And playing Smoke and Stack, aside from these wardrobe pieces
Mm.
that helped you with the physicality, was there any other sort of technique or thought or line or
Mm.
some other aspect that helped you differentiate them? Because I struggle preparing for two things at once. I struggle multitasking. So to me, it's just that seems like chaos in my head. And like I said, it was so seamless. So
Thank you, bro. It's
you
kind
kind
of
of talked about it, but I feel like
no,
there's more.
it's kind of like an organized chaos a little bit. You
Yeah.
know, there was like, you know, in these days where you have like limited amount of time and, you know, we're shooting on film, 4-minute mags, you know, when you got to reload, that's another 12, 15 minutes breaking the pace of a scene. So wanting to be on and prepared and ready to go as much as possible was super important. For me, I would have to do scenes like 4 or 5 passes at it. A few as one brother and then a few as the other. So the time that I would have to go to my trailer and change would be my time to kind of unravel one and then build the other one up. So it would literally be a lot of music.
Yeah.
Music was really, really helpful to listen to. And as I took off a piece of clothing and I put another one on and I took off my gold caps, which naturally holds my mouth differently, you know, and how I speak. And I'm going through key phrases and running myself through that brother's perspective of what got them to that day. That was kind of the process.
And were you working with? You must have been working with an actor that was standing in for whatever brother you were
Yeah,
playing.
a twin double. Yeah,
twin double.
Yeah, we had a twin double.
And was it the same throughout?
Same person. Yeah, same person throughout. And you
I
know,
mean, that's kind of MVP of that's an
Unsung
important
hero.
position.
Unsung hero, bro, because it's one of those things where the technicality of what we were trying to do. So say like a typical scene, I would show up and I would run it as the other brother first to let him know exactly where I would be. So I had to predetermine my choices as the other brother first, and then I would do a second rehearsal as the character that I would start out with, as the brother I would start out with. The constant direction that I would have to give my twin double in the ballpark of where I needed my other brother to be for continuity, eye lines, other actors, other characters that are in the scene, and then imagine what I would do on the other side first. That was probably the most chaotic part about it. And then when I would flip to the other side, then so what we found out was that whatever brother went first set the rules. You know, we couldn't occupy the same space. So if I decided to like, get up and, walk down that way at a certain point, I would tell him I would do something like this and I would end up somewhere over there. And so then when I played the other brother, I would know that I couldn't walk in that space and I couldn't land where he landed, but I could counter that. So that was a fun game to figure out day to day. So things like that, like you said, like the wardrobe, the music was really helpful because music is so ingrained in this movie, the blues music.
Did you have the score before you were shooting, or did that all come after?
We had a lot of the music from the musical sequences already done. So that was
great.
actually the first time that ever happened. Ludwig Göransson, who's our longtime collaborator and composer since Fruitvale, went to film school with Ryan, and he's phenomenal. The scenes where song was there and the music was there, that's what we listened to while we were filming, and that's a luxury that we usually don't have. It's usually some random off-brand song that you're listening to and you're kind of trying to get the rhythm and you hopefully it lines up in post in the edit, but no, we had the music, which was extremely helpful. Yeah, extremely helpful.
Somebody take me in your arms tonight. All right.
Character-wise for you, do you listen to a lot of music preparing for roles or specifically?
I do. I mean, I listen to a lot of music just in general. And yeah, I would say the last maybe 3 or 4 years, pretty much every project I do, and now Kirsten asks me to make a playlist for her, but
Nice.
I think it helps immensely, and I like to make very long playlists, put it on shuffle,
Okay.
and just sort of see where it takes me. And I don't know, I think anything that can get you out of here, because it's a fine line between preparation, asking all the questions, making sure no stone is left unturned, and then, okay, that's enough. Thinking now it's just time to jump in and, see what happens. But yeah, music always plays a big part. And for this, we were fortunate as well in that Jerskin Fendricks, our composer, had written the entire score before we started.
Nice.
And Yorgos Lanthimos has worked with him on two previously, but he made the decision with this film, again, going back to these kind of games that he likes to play.
You gotta give me an example of one of these games.
I will.
Okay.
Well, this is a kind of example. He decided with this movie he didn't want the composer to read the script, and he didn't want him to visit set. He decided to give him 5 words and to see what he came up with. And he gave him bees,
Okay.
basement,
Okay.
spaceship, Emma Stone,
Yeah.
bald,
Okay.
and said, all right, go on your way, come back with a score. And it was brilliant.
Yeah, man.
It's really strange how, Jerskin created this score off of those 5 words. I think Yorgos told me that he did like really dive deep into research on bees and spaceship. There's not much research you can do for basement or Emily Bowles, but
it's a feeling. It's a feeling.
But he he came back with this brilliant score that we then listened to before we were shooting. So it's this weird kind of circle of inspiration that played out from this weird little game that Yorgos decided to play.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tension was definitely there.
Yeah,
You know?
and he told him to go big as well, which you definitely hear in the score.
Big time. No, he left a lot of room and spaces to kind of you know, to let things breathe, and then when it was time to get into it,
Yeah.
it was there.
We were talking a little bit beforehand just about the double duty aspect that you've now done twice with acting and directing. I'm curious what you learned as an actor from directing, or if there was anything, because that sounds like my worst nightmare. Directing something that I'm in and being forced to watch dailies.
Yeah, that's
because I would imagine it's very helpful. But
watching
it seems
dailies
like
is
torture.
extremely helpful.
Yeah,
It's extremely helpful as a director, for sure.
and an actor, I would imagine it's like you're forced to see the sort of evolution of take one to take whatever.
It really depends on the type of actor you are. This response is very specific to me, you know, and how I like to work. I would say after directing, I understand a director's wants, needs, and priorities from a day-to-day perspective. I'm not saying I was late to set before, you know, punctual, this guy here, responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, all the time. But just understanding how important it is to get the first shot off in the day. And as an actor, just being like, okay, cool. It's extremely important to get that first shot off. So we have the best chance at making our day.
Yeah.
How can I move things along in a way to make sure that happens? You know, I think for me was understanding the role that you play, not just the character form in front of the camera, but what that piece of the puzzle, how that can slow down, how that could speed up, how that could, you know, you can affect a lot on a day-to-day basis. So I think after directing, you know, as an actor, that's something that really I paid more attention to in a big time way. But you know, performance wise, I think that stays the same in projects that I'm directing, that I'm acting in. There is a ability to direct while you act, which is a new tool
Yeah.
to have, you know, without breaking momentum or keeping us in the flow state as much as possible. You know, keeping that chemistry, protecting that artistic integrity, but that bubble, that magic, that's whatever happening. I can keep things moving in that space for as long as possible.
Are you saying as you're in a scene,
Yeah.
keeping it rolling, resetting?
One of the biggest takeaways I think from talking to actor directors, you know, is the washing away the guilt of watching while you're in a scene.
Of doing both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause at first you feel a bit guilty because, you know, I know the frame, I know where we're at, I know what I'm looking at, I know what the cameras are seeing, you know, and I know what I kind of want. And at the same time being present, you know, having takes, having an open dialogue and communication with your cast and actors so they understand that there's going to be a moment where this is on you, this is about you. So I'm feeding you in a way, you know, that's giving me what I need. Or if I need you to, man, it'll be a beautiful shot if you're, you know, looking that way.
Right.
But, you know, I'm just gonna step that way. You know, I'm gonna move the whole company, everything that I got to do while we're in the middle of a take. I'm gonna move it that way to make sure that you're looking the way that I think I need you to look in that moment. You know, so there's little things like that that I think gave me an advantage to, you know, getting as close to, you know, what I was trying to achieve from that moment as possible. So just the duality of doing both, I think is uh is beneficial at times, and you know has its downsides too. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit hectic.
I've got a question for you. It's just, we've known each other for a long time, and I wonder for you,
Mm.
Friday Night Lights days, or even or even before then, who were your sort of heroes? Someone that you looked up to that acted as kind of a North Star for the potential of what can be done, or maybe what you would like to do one day, and which you're now doing.
Yeah, that's
Mentor, I would say
a good one.
someone you looked at from afar.
Yeah.
And then maybe any that you knew on a more personal level.
I guess I always feel bad because I didn't look up to a lot of people as a kid. You know, I think my parents was my example of, like most parents are,
Yeah.
of my bar of how to do things and you know, guidelines of hard work and all, you know, all the foundation, right? Then I think having a name, Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
growing up as a kid, uh, affected things in a way that in hindsight I can talk about it, but in the moment didn't really understand what was this thing going on just throughout life, right? Like your name is important, you know, it's how you introduce yourself, it's what you're called upon in school and how the world, you know, responds to you. But when there's another guy out there who's, you know, the
Somewhat
guy,
well-known.
you know,
Yeah.
very, very well known, right? I think it kind of created like a healthy chip. So
Yeah.
like, you know, of wanting to be competitive at whatever it was, or a sense of wanting your own identity, you know, in a way. So I think there was that kind of, you know, of course you looked up to him, you know what I'm saying? Like, how could you not? You know what I'm saying? So there's a bit of that
That's
was
interesting.
that was there, that existed.
Did you ever ask your parents, like, why?
Yeah.
What did they say?
Well, my dad's name is Michael Jordan.
Okay.
I'm named after my dad.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
no, I know. It was the most.
And so
the
he
most
was probably around the same.
My dad's
age?
older than Mike.
He's older than
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah. So look, no, I had
So
no
my-
shot. It was what it was going to be. I had no shot.
So
He's
it's
Michael
not their
A.
fault.
At all.
It's just the way the stars aligned.
You know, it was all meant,
It was
to be. I'll tell you, real talk.
And it's funny that you're talking about this chip. You know, the other Michael Jordan is notorious for using that chip as well. You know,
That's
so
true.
it's working for both of y'all.
It's working for both of
Yeah.
us. That's funny. Yeah. So he's Michael A. I'm Michael B. So yeah. But I would say what I looked up to was I wanted to be good. I wanted to be great at something. And I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know what it was. I don't care what it was. I just wanted to be great at it. I think that was something that kicked in early. And I think partially because of my parents, and then the name, and your path being your path. Like I firmly believe, like what's for you is for you. You know, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and this isn't it though. This is the right now. This is the chapter that we're currently in, and through this experience, you're going to evolve and grow into whatever the next version of yourself is, and whatever purpose that may be, and whatever inspirations and mentors or whatever comes along the way. They're shepherding you along that path. Look, man, it's been we can't wait another 2 decades.
I know. I know.
to do
Maybe
this,
something
to do this again.
outside of a scenario like this, as
Yeah.
nice as it has been.
Yeah, man.
But man, again, congratulations on everything.
You as well, man. Big
Feels
time.
like you know, someone from my high school is out there doing amazing things. And like I've said before, I mean, the fact that not only you're doing the kind of work you're doing, but when good people do great things, it feels like a win for everyone, man. So
Man,
happy
bro,
for you, so
man.
proud of
Thank
you,
you.
and
Same, man,
keep
same.
at it.
Hey,
Can't
man.
wait to see what's next.
Likewise, bro. Come here, bro. Man, big time, man.